Is it the companies the problem, or is it us as individuals? Are we the problem in not demanding the change?
Well, we have free market mantras. Oh, it's a free market. Until the free market brings us very high-priced gas, now we want the government to step in. We only want them to step in one direction to lower the price. Well, you know, how about having the market work the way the market works? The reason that we have government interventions, they have to prevent the market from going crazy in a monopolistic way that hurts people, and at the same time they have to prevent the market from making limited individuals in companies or investments rich on the backs of the rest of us through rising sea level, through intensified hurricanes, fires in the U.S. West like in California, which have gone up by a factor of 4 in the last 30 years as it's warmer, and all these other factors that are not charged to the price of doing business with business as usual oil, coal, and gas consumption. So the government has two roles. One is it has to prevent very, very rapid price fluctuations that hurt the economy, but it also has to prevent ridiculously low prices that aren't charging for the true value of those commodities. Otherwise, people will not be investing in the alternatives that we need. So it's a combination of people wanting to keep the price low and the companies wanting to get maximum return on investment. But at the same time, they're forgetting the people who are hurt by the status quo. And that becomes obvious when you take out New Orleans and Galveston, because although global warming doesn't make hurricanes, the warmer Gulf makes them a little stronger than they otherwise would have been, thereby intensifying the damage. And what we've seen now is just the beginning. The ultimate tip of the iceberg, because as the icebergs melt, as they're melting rapidly in Greenland, the sea level rises. So you raise the sea level, intensify hurricanes. Hurricane Alley becomes pretty unlivable by the end of the century. That's all part of the price of using coal, oil, and gas by dumping it in the atmosphere as if it's an unpriced sewer with no consequence. So we have to set a proper price. The trouble is if you set it overnight, like what happened to the gasoline prices in 2008, then people get badly hurt. So it's not that we shouldn't increase the price, it's that it should take place over a decade, so there's time to adjust. So the market slammed it on so quickly that we had a lot of people injured by it, economically and otherwise, and then they screamed that they wanted relief. And as long as the relief is temporary, I'm fine with it. But if the relief is long-term, then you're sending the wrong signals to the energy market, and people will be buying the old products that still pollute rather than investing in the new ones that are much cleaner. And that President Obama has recognized is critical, which is if we're going to have a 21st century economy, we have to build it on sustainable jobs, and that basically means energy systems that don't have the baggage of health effects and environmental effects that are non-sustainable over the rest of the century.
What are the consequences of inactivity? Not by us, but by the whole country, and for some degree the rest of the world, because we're not in this by ourselves.
The U.S. is about 20% of world emissions, so we say, oh, well, we're not such a bad guy, we're only a fifth of it, till they remind us out there that we're 4% of the world's population, and we're about a factor of 4 or 5 per capita, much more emitting than the world average. And poorer countries like India or China, they're even lower than the world average. So they see us as the prime cause of the problem. And we see them with their large populations and their growing economies as the prime source of the future problem. So what they look to us to do is to stop our profligate consumption. We look for them to do something about population and to leapfrog to cleaner technology. And in fact, we're right and they're right. We both have to do that, and we have to do it cooperatively. But it's so easy to blame. At international meetings, the UN-sponsored Conference of the Parties, like the Kyoto Protocol or the new one coming up in Copenhagen in 2009, which will be Kyoto 2. And what happens? You go there and you listen to China, you listen to India, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, and they say, wait a minute, you guys emit 4 times per person more than we do. When we catch up to you, we'll talk about taking a greenhouse emissions target. And we say back to them, oh no, you have too many people, so we can't multiply all your large number of people times our emissions, because then the world will triple its CO2. In the last 8 years, the rate of increase of CO2 is higher than the UN estimate, that is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is a fan of uncertainties. From business as usual greed, which triples CO2 at the end of the century, to egalitarian sharing, which still doubles it. There's a very big difference. The last 10 years have been above the highest estimate. We're headed toward tripling or more if everybody keeps saying me first. So what's so important about the UN process is people get together and realize, you know, you got to give up something, get something. If you want to have a sustainable planet, everybody's going to have to do something here. So Chinese is still saying no, and let me be nasty. What they've basically said is we're going to hold the sustainability agenda of the planet Earth hostage to our notion of equity with the rich countries. And what do we say? Well, when President Bush the first went to Rio de Janeiro in 1992, and at least he did sign the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, committing us to stabilize greenhouse gases. We're not doing it, but we're legally committed to do it. He said at the same time that he did the right thing by signing it. He said at the same time, and the U.S. standard of living is not up for negotiation. So what we said, to be nasty, is we're going to hold the sustainability agenda of planet Earth hostage to our notion of consumption. So if consumption is sacrosanct in the OECD countries and growth is sacrosanct in the developing countries, we are looking at tripling or quadrupling CO2 in which everybody loses. We have got to make a deal, and we've got to do it soon. To make a deal, you have to have trust. To have trust, you have to have leadership. And with the Obama administration, there is now a really good chance that that can happen. It will not be easy to negotiate because developing countries want cars. But do their cars have to be what we did in the Victorian Industrial Revolution? Do they have to be 3-ton sport utility vehicles with big V8s and internal combustion engines, or they could be a little lighter, smaller electric cars? Do they have to burn coal uncontrollably into the atmosphere? Couldn't they sort of leapfrog over that to either capturing the CO2 in the coal and put it underground, or using solar thermal? They've got a lot of resources in China and India for solar energy, for wind energy, maybe even safer nuclear, but we have to work on getting those cycles and the wastes dealt with. I think it's technically possible. It's a little expensive, but there's a lot of options that we need. And I'll quote Bush the first favorably. Remember, he said, "Let 1,000 flowers bloom." In the energy world, it's not 1,000, maybe 25. We need a portfolio of multiple options. We have to let them compete against each other. We have to have private capital invest in these startups, and we have to invent our way out of this problem and share the inventions. And it can be done when we have the political will to do it.